What's going on, guys? Vlad with eeenthusiast.com here, and in today's video we're going to be doing something different. So as you can see on your screen, I have XCode running, and I'm going to be showing you how to create an application and create UI table views in two different fashions. So the first one is going to be just pulling it straight from the storyboard and implementing the functions that are already there, and the second one is going to be implementing it into a view into a view controller on its own. So without any further delay, let's get started. So here's a new project. I'm going to select a single view application, click on next. A product name is going to be TableView Tutorial. Organization name, it's probably your name or your company name. Organization identifier, the reverse.com notation, so bundle will be com.viromanov.TableViewTutorial. Language we're going to be using today is Swift. Device is universal, not crucial for us today, so we're going to keep it at both iPhone, iPad. I'm not going to be using any core data, UI tests, or unit tests in this video, so click on next. And I'm going to be saving it here, creating a Git repository as we go forth. Click on create, and you should have a blank project in front of you right now. So what I'm going to be doing really quick is deleting the view controller, which comes pre-built with the application. Click on delete, and I'm going to be deleting this file as well. Remove the references and move to trash. Alright, so I'm back on the main storyboard, and what I'm looking for on the bottom right, I apologize for hiding that. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So what I'm looking for is a TableViewController, and I'm going to drag it out onto the storyboard. And as always, you always want to have a file with your controller, so right click on the folder, new file, and this is going to be, make sure to click on iOS, Cocoa Touch class, next. Make sure to select the UITableViewController right here. It's the same for me because I've used it before, so it may not be what you're looking for, but pay attention to that. TableView, TableView, what do we want to call it? TableViewController 1. That sounds pretty good. All right, click on create. And we have our TableViewController 1. So let's quickly go over what has been implemented for you. Beginning by viewDidLoad, this is a function which is going to be called once your view is fully loaded onto the device. They'll receive memory warning if you're exceeding whatever limits you get by the iOS system. You will have a warning here. Next are very important functions for your table view. The first one is number of sections in table view, so we're going to be changing to 1. We're going to have 1 section in this particular table view. And then number of rows in section is essentially a count of how many objects or how many cells you will be building in your or displaying in your table view. I'm going to be showing you how to correct that from a 0 in just a moment. And the next function, which we will uncomment right away, is the cell for row at index path, which essentially creates a cell and then displays that particular cell as well as its data in the table view. So this is very important. We're going to be implementing that as well. Some of the other functions, I mean, you can read through the documentation. They're implemented for you as well. It has to do with like editing. Sometimes you want to swipe and then delete certain items. You want to swipe and then, you know, like email certain items. And you have some seg stuff, I believe, yes, at the bottom here in navigation. So we can leave that commented out for now. But let's get back to the storyboard really quick. A couple of things we want to do. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that our table view is the initial view controller. Otherwise, our program is going to crash because it's not going to know what you want to show first. So is initial view controller needs to be checked. And then we also want to put that as a class of our view controller so that we know where to put the data, where to pull the data from. So TableViewController 1, this refers back to the Swift file that we've created right here. Okay, so A couple of things that we will need to do in order to show some data, as I mentioned. So as part of this demo, I'm going to be creating a custom class which is going to contain, just a field for a name and a value in order to kind of showcase for the tutorial what you can output. It doesn't have to be this, it can be anything for you, but let's create a new file. It will be a Swift file. Let's call it object1, just to go with that same theme. Create. Obviously you can name it no matter anything you want. Import UIKit, and here we will declare our class, so object1, and this will be an NS object, so it will inherit from NS object. Okay, so what I'm going to be, like I've mentioned, I'm going to be creating a class which has a name and a value, and I'm going to be doing this by showing you another principle, which is variable and data encapsulation. So I'm going to create two private variables. So private var underscore name is a string, and private var underscore value is an int. So remember that private variables cannot be accessed from outside of the class, which is the basis of kind of data encapsulation. So you only want your objects that you've defined in your own class to be able to access certain objects, but you also want to give somebody, for example, read access. So this is what I'm going to be doing right here. So I'm going to create a variable which is name, and this is also going to be of type string, but the name variable is going to allow somebody outside of the class to retrieve the underscore name, a variable which is private. So I'm going to create a getter. So essentially when someone wants to get the name variable, we will return the underscore name one. Similarly for value, which is of type int, we will have a getter for return underscore value. Alright, so it should be fairly straightforward. Let's create an initializer for our class. So we're going to need a name of type string, and we're going to need value of type int in order to initialize what we have. So underscore name, and remember I can do this because I'm still within the same class. Right, so I can assign something to underscore name and underscore value because I'm in the same class. Okay, so that's going to be object one, fairly straightforward. Let's come back to our controller, and the first thing that we're going to be creating is essentially an array of those objects, right? Because each cell. So imagine your table view has an X number of cells. It could be 10, it could be 50, 100, or any other number. But each one of those cells is essentially an object. And in our case, it would be object 1. So each one of those objects, we would want them to be contained in an array. So what I'm going to be creating is a var objects equals to an array of object 1. Okay? So this is going to be creating an array and initializing it of objects 1. And then I'm going to be coming back here on viewDidLoad and essentially populating this array. And to do that, I'm going to be using a for_x in 1 in 5 function. Those of you who are not familiar with this, is essentially a for loop going from 1 through 5, and each time x is being assigned to those to that integer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just makes it a very convenient way of creating things. So let's create our object. An object is equal to object 1, and this should give us our initializer. So the name I'm going to be giving this is object number, and I'm going to be using string interpolation from x. And what this essentially means is that my objects are going to be named just quickly here, object number 1, object number 2, and etc., because this is converting my int to a string. And here we're just going to be putting in simply x, and then objects.append object. So I'm appending each one of those objects to the array, and once I've gone through this loop, I'm going to pretty much reload the data of the whole table to make sure that everything is correct. So once the array is completely done, and you want to do this, if you're pulling data from the web, if you're doing any sort of networking, maybe retrieving text messages, retrieving tweets from an API, you want to make sure that the table view data is reloaded. Next is, as I mentioned, is the number of rows in section. So this is very important, and this is essentially the number of cells we're going to be creating. So instead of returning 0, we're going to do an object.count, and this will dynamically check the array, and in this case return 5. It can be anything that you're setting in your array. Fairly straightforward. Alright, so cell for row at index path. This is where you set everything for your cell. So instead of doing reuse identifier, let's do table cell. Alright, so you're going to be copying this, go into main.storyboard, select the cell, so you want to make sure that TableViewCell is selected, and we're going to be changing its identifier to table cell. Click on enter, and let me double check if okay, this is all set. Let's get back to the controller and see what is going on. Alright, so for the cell, so we're going to be creating a cell which is going to be DQ reusable cell with identifier table cell, which is the identifier that we've set in our storyboard, but we still need to populate the cell and kind of tell the cell what the contents need to be. So what I'm going to be doing is creating an item holder, which is going to be objects, and then this is going to reference back the index path .row, which is essentially taking or creating an item which is the reference to the objects at a certain row or certain position in the table view. And then cell.text label. So the text label of our cell is going to be text is going to be item.name. Okay? So it should be fairly straightforward, and then return cell. So whatever our text is for the label is going to be name. Now let's make it a bit more interesting. So let's see if we can do something like this. So it's going to be name, and then the value, which is going to be the interpolation of item.value. So it should say, if we come back here, object X, and then value semicolon, and then the value that is displayed there. Okay, so let's see if we build this and what we're going to see. So we should see 5 different objects with within our table view. Let's give it a moment. Alright, so as you can see, exactly what we expected. The names, and the names are going to be object hashtag 1 and then space a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, you can change those names. You can hold all kinds of different objects within your table view, but that is the basic implementation on what you need, what you fundamentally need in order to get a table view going. So let's take a look at the second method that you can do this. So imagine you're in your storyboard, and for whatever reason, you don't want to use this table view, but instead you just want to pull out a view controller. So the difference here is that you can pretty much add like different items, and your table view could be like a small subsection of your view controller. So this is going to be done in a different fashion. So what you will need to do is, first of all, you will need to search for a table view, and then you will have to pull in this table view on your screen. And then we are going to be, just for demonstration purposes, we're going to be pulling it across the whole screen, but it can be, you can use constraints to do whatever you need. And I'm going to be just pinning it to zeros all over the place. Add 4 constraints. And we're going to be pulling in a cell. So just drop a table view cell into your view controller. So notice that both of these are different. So one of them is a table view controller and one is just a view controller. So that is the difference there. Now we're going to be creating a custom class, just how we did for the table view. We're going to be creating a custom class for this one. Let me just, not sure why the window decided to go up. Anyways, so right click and new file. And this is also going to be, make sure to click on iOS or source, Cocoa Touch class, click on next, but this time it's going to be a UIViewController. Make sure that you have that correct. So View Controller 1. Once again, it's going to be in Swift. Click on next, create. Alright, so as you can see, there is no implementation of the same functions here. So what you're going to be doing is essentially creating them on your own. Alright, and so the way to do that is essentially by implementing two protocols which the TableView controller implements. So it's UITableView Delegate and UITableView Data Source. So these are the protocols which contain all of the functions that you'll need for a table view, essentially. And what you're going to get right now is a warning saying that you do not conform to those protocols, which means that you're not implementing the required functions which are specified by those protocols. So you cannot essentially utilize them, but you are calling them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to the compiler. So your option is, so it's calling out for data source. You can click on control and then click on this. And this documentation will tell you essentially which functions you'll need to implement. So it's just an easy trick if you've forgotten those function names. But essentially, whatever does not have optional here needs to be implemented no matter what. So the two functions right here will need to be implemented. And they are exactly the same as we did in the TableView controller. So the functions that we have here will need to be implemented back there. So what we can do is actually just copy paste and just make it really easy so that I don't have to go over what is doing what for now. And here it's not going to be overriding because you are implementing the protocol, so it's just going to be function. Let's remove the override. Next thing is objects. Obviously that array needs to be implemented as well. So let's copy this, objects, and we're going to be, let's make it a 7 here for whatever reason, just for demonstrating that it is a different, different table view. So here let's do from 1 to 7. And one more thing, table view is actually not something that is recognized by a view controller, so we're going to have to go back to our main storyboard, go into split view, select this. It should be showing me the correct, but it's showing the .h for some reason. Let's see if I linked it correctly. Right, so this will need to be linked properly as well. So this is our view controller 1. This should correct itself, perfect. So the table view needs to be essentially linked to our controller. So table view, UITableView, it is an outlet, weak connect, and that should do the trick. Let's go back to a single view. Okay, so let's see if everything is okay. Returning 1, objects.count, return the cell. So should work just fine. One last thing, because we want to see the second view controller instead of the first one, I'm going to be dragging the arrow to it. So we're going to be loading directly into the second view controller, which should have our table view. And let's see what comes out. So that is perfectly normal. Two things that we need to change in order to make this work is we are not implicitly declaring that we are managing the protocols which we've implemented on top. So I need to go back to view.load and do a TableView dot data source equals self, as well as TableView dot delegate equals self. So this is telling the table view that this controller is going to be managing essentially the view and kind of creating and populating all of the cells. The other thing that I had forgotten is actually this table cell was an identifier that we used on the other one, but by copying and pasting, obviously it didn't get translated. So we're going to be going back to this table view, which we've implemented right now, going into the identifier and pasting a table cell right there. So let's try that again. Let's see if everything compiles and displays as it should. Build succeeded. That is a good sign. And here we have it. So all of the 7 objects with the values, and we've done it through 2 different ways. You can pick whichever one suits your applications. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you've learned a couple of things about UI table views and 2 different ways on how to implement them. My goal is to create a couple of other tutorials on how to create custom cells, how to create custom objects which will manage the cells for you, and then kind of create a nice layout for those cells as well. So once again, if you like the video, make sure to hit the like button down below. Click the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber of the channel yet. And more things to come. Thank you guys for watching once again. See ya.